Carlos, great to get you back on. Welcome back to CNBC. I wanted to start on some commentary that Carrie Lam made in the New York Times in an opinion piece that was published just a few hours ago. She writes, "No doubt the summer's protests have had an impact on the immediate future of Hong Kong's economy. In particular, she points out travel, hotel, retail and food and beverage sectors. But interestingly, she also added here that Hong Kong will not escape the fallout of ongoing trade tensions between China and the United States. She says a recession is possible, if not likely, over the next year. How bad has the situation turned in your view, Carlos?
Yes, well, we do expect to see a lot more weakness in activity going forwards. And remember that the economy hasn't been doing very well since the beginning of the year, with very weak growth in the first and second quarter, and that's predominantly related to that decline in exports as the US and China engage in a trade war and as global demand in general starts to fall. Going forwards, of course, we've had a series of protests that have been ongoing for 100 days over the summer, and that's going to have a toll on domestic consumption, which of course is also a big chunk of GDP. Our current scenario sees growth falling even further on a quarterly basis in Q3. So a further contraction in Q3 following a contraction in Q2 means a technical recession. So it could be much sooner than Carrie Lam is sort of giving away in her comments.
We know that the Hong Kong authorities have already pumped some stimulus into the economy to try and offset the impact of these protests. A number of economists, though, saying it fell far short of what was needed. How much more stimulus do you think is required to perhaps prevent such a significant downturn as is being estimated?
Correct. So it's been said before, but some measures on the fiscal front have been announced. In order to buffer the economy. They're not substantial. We're talking less than 1% of GDP. And we're talking measures that are really one-offs, like transfers to students and sort of tax breaks for certain income brackets. So all of that is going to help to boost consumption in the very short term, but it won't have a lasting effect on the economy. Ideally, we want to see more structural reforms and more long-term transfers to the lower income brackets in society in order for that really to have a meaningful effect on the economy.
And none of those things can be done until the immediate issue of the protests is out of the way. What does Carrie Lam need to tell her people this evening?
Correct. So unfortunately, policy making is going to be very slow until all of this is resolved. The initiative to try to reach out to the community is a welcome one because a lot of the society in Hong Kong just perceives that the government has been a little bit aloof in their handling of protests. And of course, there are some policy failures related to housing bubble and income inequality that the government has not paid enough attention to in the past years. So it's a good first step. More needs to be done on the reform front to ensure that those policy mistakes are corrected. Reforms on the housing front is a priority, but also more long-term transfers. And of course, the protesters' immediate concerns surrounding the use of police force also would ideally need to be addressed in order for there to be a resolution to ongoing protests.